he definitely was not the best coach on the field. Brock Purdy was definitely not the MVP that he has been in previous games. It was just pretty much a bit of a disappointment, in my opinion. Coming into this game, I didn't expect a blowout win on either side, but if I did, I feel like we've just been accustomed to seeing the 49ers blowout teams, so you would have assumed it would have been them. I think that it's safe to say that the AFC is just a much better conference than the NFC right now. I will say, for positivity, watching all the other games this weekend, I still think the 49ers are the best team in the NFC. But yeah, this doesn't give me any hope for the Super Bowl or if they're even going to get to a Super Bowl. Just watching how I think the two most important people on the 49ers played, which would be Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy. Christian McCaffrey played great, but what was your immediate takeaways? Also, really quick, I just want to say, anyone in the chat, I know that the press conferences are going on right now. So if we get any updates to Trent Williams, Brock Purdy, I know towards the end of the game was cleared, but it did look like he hit his head. Jalen Moore was taken out. So just if there's any major injury updates, put it in the comments and I'll make sure to read it. But yeah, Rohan, what was your takeaway? How's your Christmas football night been? Not Christmas, but how was the game for you? What were your immediate
Yeah, this
takeaways?
one obviously is not a great win or not a great game for the 49ers. I mean, you talk about this game, you can break it down in two different ways. You can point to offense, defense, you can point to the turnovers, you can point to first half, second half. I don't think the 49ers really win in any aspect if you look at it. San Francisco struggled really to start the game. I mean, they operated in a different pretense, more of a pass first philosophy overall, and it seemed like both teams kind of looked to do that. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens also passed a good amount in that first half. And I didn't hate the philosophy. I thought Christian McCaffrey, I mean, obviously, if you have him, you probably prefer to run the ball more. But when you look at the way the 49ers didn't have offensive success, the first pick, that's on Brock Purdy. Threw the ball a little late on the crosser to Deebo Samuel. Makes sense. It was his third read, but that's a ball he probably wants back and a ball that cost the 49ers at least 3 points in the red zone where you usually get 7. 49ers came into this game 10 for 10 in their last 10 opportunities in the red zone, 13 for their last 14. They went up against the number one red zone team, and the defense prevailed for Baltimore. Really, when you look at the red zone numbers, the 49ers weren't great. And one of them was just outside the red zone, their first field goal. It was at the 25-yard line, but still, Baltimore was able to shut down San Francisco whenever they got really close until the game got out of hand. And so the way that I look at it, that first pick, that's on Purdy. The second pick, bad luck. I don't know if you can attribute it to more the way that Baltimore ran that one. I mean, you obviously have the cornerback crashing in. He obviously gets a deflection, and you needed Marlon Humphrey to have a cornerback blitz on the blind side in order for that play to work, and that's exactly what happened. And he was doing that on a completely different pretense. It's just he was in the right place at the right time. The third interception, a ball, I think that was 50-50. I mean, that's a ball. It's on third down. I don't think you should throw that crossbody with Brock as if you're Brock Purdy, but another ball that's kind of
Do you
just tipped
remember
up in
him?
the air.
Do you remember
Huh?
him a couple games? Do you remember him a couple games ago going to the press conference and promising to never throw that ball again?
Yeah,
And I think
yeah,
you and I had a post game, or not a post game, but a show, and I was like, he's gonna throw that again because he thinks he can
yeah.
make them. And
And he
he got
did,
it
and it ended up being a
that
pick.
time. It worked out for him, but yeah, this time it did not at
Yeah,
all.
that's the danger throwing crossbody with the arm strength that Brock has. It's a little dangerous of a pass, and I don't know if he thought there was a penalty flag on that one. I don't know if he thought it was a free play, and he's kind of just giving a 50-50 ball to Kittle. Not a great pass there, and that one ended up being the third pick. The fourth one was just ugly. It's just out in front, but that one was in the second half. Overall, this game, San Francisco offensively could never get a rhythm. Tried to throw the ball, and then, in the second half when it's too late, really still couldn't get a rhythm until Sam Darnold kind of came in at the very end. And then defensively, first half, I thought they played pretty darn well. I mean, there were a couple of mishaps, the 31-yard run for Lamar Jackson among them. There were a couple of mishaps, but ultimately you forced 3 field goals in the red zone. That's pretty tough to do. And they ended up, they turned the ball over 3 times. Defense had poor field position, and it was like you mentioned post or prior to the show, They only got 8 points out of those 3 possessions. It was 16-12 coming into the half, and the 49ers had the ball to start the second half. And then the collapse continued. Ugly one here. Like you pointed out, it's a humiliating defeat, but one I think the Niners can kind of flush away and move forward. I don't disagree. I think they're still the best team in the NFC. And I mean, if you look at it, a couple of teams in the NFC right now are really struggling. Not really struggling, but not doing as dominant as you'd want them to be. Philly just, they were in a one possession game with New York just earlier today. New
Yeah,
York has
that was
not been that good
crazy. It
overall.
looked like they were about to lose
Exactly.
to the Giants.
And Dallas, I mean, they lost they lost to Miami, just lost to Buffalo. They've also been struggling. So the NFC right now looking kind of weak overall, but a lot of questions coming out of this one.
I completely agree. So I wanted to ask you, when you looked at this loss, did you think that it was all on Purdy, or do you think that it was? Did you see problems with Kyle Shanahan's game plan? Later on in the game, there was a lot of missed tackle issues. I saw you tweeting about that. Kyle Posey has been consistently keeping a tally. I think it was the last game that they've had like 17, 15, and 12 missed tackles. And I didn't see him write down the stat for this one, but I know in the latter half there was a lot of them. Now I do really want to say, because I even tweeted about this, I think that I do not like. My dad and I were kind of arguing about this during the game. He was saying, what is this defense doing? And I kind of was like, I don't think we should bring up the defense that much when we're talking about this loss, because I think they held the Ravens to a really low score, considering that the 49ers threw 5 interceptions. Like, that could have been so many more points. And it really only got out of hand, I feel like, in the second half, when the 49ers just came out completely flat. Like, I was still, I don't know about you, but in that third quarter, I mean, heck, when when they scored 1 touchdown, like, there was consistently throughout the game, I thought the 49ers might be able to come back. And that was something that would not have been possible if right out the gate they would have been down more than 21 points, which is what they would have been down if the 49ers let up touchdowns on all the opportunities they had in that first quarter. So I I don't know. I don't blame the defense too much. I do know Jair Brown had some missed tackles. Fred Warner really struggled a little bit. I know Levin Black from, is it Niners Nation or the show that he does with Rob? He kind of tweeted out that he was upset that Fred Warner was laughing and giggling after a missed tackle that he had. That was towards the end of the game. I don't know. I didn't see a huge problem with it. I didn't see it as them not living up to their standard. I really felt like the defense gave it their all, and it wasn't until the game had really gotten away with them and there was more than 4 interceptions thrown that it felt like the defense maybe was something that you could have brought up as an issue. So definitely a total team failure, but for me it was mostly on the offense, and honestly mostly on Brock Purdy. There was multiple times in this game where especially in the beginning, where I was thinking that the 49ers were outplaying the Ravens. That first drive, the Ravens go 3 and out. Then the 49ers methodically walk down the field. They're making, catches. They were, every time that Brock Purdy threw an interception, it felt like for like 4 to 5 plays before that, they were like doing great. George Kittle was getting the ball at a high volume, which I wasn't expecting. But no, I thought I keep bringing up what I almost tweeted, but I feel like in the moment I'm so I like live and die with each pass. So I remember being like thinking and almost tweeting like the 49ers are out of the Ravens league. Like they're not, like they look like they're totally going to outclass them. And then it felt like every time I had that thought, Brock Purdy would throw an interception. And I was like, dude, can you stop? Because if you just weren't giving away the ball, the 49ers would be winning by like 20 points. I guess as a Ravens fan, you could say, well, if we were capitalizing on all your interceptions, we'd be, I guess that could go either way. But yeah, the question is, do you think that this loss was all on Brock Purdy? I feel like over the course of the week, people are going to really be discussing him, since this was an opportunity for him to kind of cement that MVP conversation. And much like Dak Prescott, he should the bet on that one.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to put it. I usually refrain kind of from putting the loss all on one person. I don't think that that's ever the case. But if you're talking about the top of the ladder, I'm not. I don't like using the word blame as much, but you're gonna say it. This one is primarily on Brock Purdy because there's not a chance that any team wins a game when you throw four interceptions. I broke them down. I don't think all four are his fault. I think two and a half kind of are his fault. But regardless, you can't have those mistakes, especially in the cases that where you had them. 49ers throw the first pick in the red zone, ultimate a momentum killer right there. That takes away a scoring opportunity that you had. At least to score 3 points. You didn't. Should have probably scored seven. You didn't. Then the picks overall they stop your momentum offensively. You can't really get anything going, and then you're at a point in your game script where you're down and you can't run the football like you usually do. And so I think that's the case. But like I said earlier, I do have issues with Kyle Shanahan in this game. I thought that there were certain issues with Kyle Shanahan, with his play calling. I think you do want to run the ball a little more early. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think that him choosing to throw the ball as much as he did is the reason why the 49ers struggled offensively. I think that there
It
were
was working aside from the passes that like
exactly,
Purdy was
exactly.
intercepted, right?
But
It
you
wasn't
do
like they weren't like getting like they were like getting down the field. The first interception was like basically at the touch, like it should have been a touchdown.
exactly. But you do want to, you still want to incorporate McCaffrey in the way that you can try and force this Ravens, not Raiders, defensive line to kind of probably not tee off as much as they did in this game. But overall, I think that there's a lot of blame to go around. Like I said, Kyle Shanahan were a couple of them. I thought there were a few questionable decisions. And for a coach, when you have a few questionable decisions, that piles up a lot during the course of a game. Offensive line, I thought was pretty bad. I mean,
Really
there's no
bad.
way putting around it. They were pretty darn bad. And it makes sense given the personnel, especially at the end that they had out there. Colton McKivitz was awful. He was terrible. I mean, he's been pretty bad all year, but he was awful in this one. Jalen Moore came in, he gave up a sack. I mean, the offensive line as a whole at the end was just battered and beaten down. It's tough to win games when you're trying to drop back as much as you can and you can't throw the ball because obviously of the pressure that you're facing. Purdy clearly was flustered by the pressure. On one of his near picks, he has a free rusher coming at him and he rushed the throw and he almost ended up with another interception. I think the 49ers could have had potentially like 8 interceptions in this one.
Yeah.
I think that it
It
was like
did
that,
right before that fourth one he threw, he almost threw one and you were like,
yeah, exactly. And so this one was an ugly one. Defensively, the reason I'm not going to put blame much on the defense is because the 49ers defense kept them in the game in the first half. They're not close without that defensive performance in the first half. In the second half, very clear. They were very tired in the second half. They were gassed. They did not have as much energy. Ravens had whatever they wanted in the second half. But in my opinion, the offense is the reason they lost this game. You can't have that performance on offense and expect your defense to pick you up for the whole game, especially not in this type of environment. At the beginning of the season and even periodically throughout the year, what I've said about the 49ers and what I've said about their offense is, what I've said about their team and their Super Bowl hopes is right now, I don't expect the 49ers to win a Super Bowl. I've said that throughout the year. And the reasoning that I had behind it was the quarterback play, but more importantly, how does this team, respond when they're down? When they're down and they need, to pick up some momentum. So far in the close games that we've seen like that, where it's truly coming down to the wire and you kind of need some performance in the second half, you haven't really seen the 49ers respond like that before. They're usually up. And I'm not going to fault them for usually being up, but in games like this and in games like the ones that you lost, you do want some better response, especially when you know this is the type of caliber of a team that you're going to play when it comes to the playoffs. And so right now, confidence is a little wavered, but is it that much wavered? Not necessarily. I think that this one game. You flush it down. I think they're still, like we said earlier, favorites in the NFC. They're home for the entirety of this of your playoff stretch. If you can win out, or if you get some help from another team, I think that there's a lot that could still go the 49ers' way. And so we'll see. And potentially this could be the playoff matchup that you see in the Super Bowl.
I agree. It did, and the announcers even said it on TV. Zero, which is a crazy stat. 0 and 37 when the 49ers are down by 8 points.
Yeah.
I know that you shook your head, but to me that's crazy because when they were down in the second coming out of the first half, I really did feel like they could have worked their way back up. And I feel like a lot of teams, even in the fourth half, when they were down by I think a little more than 2 touchdowns, I think 15 or 16 points, I still felt like there's been plenty of teams that have came back from that, but we've just never seen this 49ers team do that. And it sucks because it feels like we know how the 49ers win. And I think everyone assumed that you would have to be able to play a game like this and win a game where you're down in order to win the Super Bowl. So it does kind of bring up those same doubts that we've had all season, which is when this team is playing its type of game and when it's explosive, it looks like the best team in the NFL. But sorry, I got distracted because my sister and her boyfriend are over there. But yeah, I was just disappointed that I felt like
Right.
when I thought that maybe other teams would have came back from a deficit, I have zero faith in the 49ers offense to be able to do that. Even what was it? They were down with like six or 8 minutes left, and they weren't going tempo. They were like slowly, methodically trying to drive down the field, and you're like, you need like 3 touchdowns, dude. Let's get to it. Why do you think that Kyle Shanahan kind of doesn't have that extra gear?
Now, the 0 and 37 stat, I think that's the most cherry pick stat. Like, personally, I don't care at all about the 0 and 37 stat, just because if you look at any coach really throughout the league, a majority of these coaches, that's going to be the case. They're not when you're down 8 points, you're not going to win games usually entering the fourth quarter. Now, the fact that there are 0 wins could be a little concerning. That's not the issue that I usually care about. But if you're talking about, in this specific game, yeah, there were opportunities to win. And this goes back to my point. Right now, and really since the beginning of the season, like I said, I don't have confidence that the 49ers can pull out of like a come from behind victory or a close game victory or one that kind of is a gutsy kind of victory, right? When you look at all of their victories, they're by a wide margin. Again, I'm not going to fault them for winning by 20 points. That's not the case. But when it comes down to a game like this, the reason it comes down to a game like this is usually you're facing tougher competition that you're usually to see in the playoffs, which is why in the regular season, there are certain games I pinpointed as to these are the games where I want to see how they can respond. The Baltimore Ravens game, especially down the line, was the number one game that, that matched that criteria. And the 49ers, once again, were not able to rise to the challenge and kind of fight through and kind of come from behind and kind of win this one.